even if you have followed this loosely, the idea that it's all in one place, it's a long read, but it's a great read. How did you guys do it? What did you find out that you didn't already know?
We started out with the idea that there'd been a great deal written about the programs, the surveillance programs that Ed Snowden disclosed, but very little written about him, what motivated him, who he was, how did he find himself. Really, it was 1 month shy of his 30th birthday, getting on a plane, leaving everything in his life behind, his home, his country, his girlfriend, his career. And at the time, it was very possible that he was also going to lose his life. It was realistic.
There's a sense of terror that goes through the piece. I mean, it really has that kind of tick-tock sense of what's going to happen next. And at some points, it seemed like he really knew and had a plan. At other points, he didn't.
That's a very good question, actually, Corey. I think one of the things that astonished me most in the reporting of this, there were many things, but this particular one, was that I don't think he had a plan B. I think he got on the plane, he left everything behind, he had on several flash drives in his suitcases, tens of thousands of documents, outlining, this country's top secrets. And his only goal was to get these in the hands of journalists who would publish them, and then maybe kind of get asylum in Iceland, or maybe kind of Hong Kong. That was it. And I think he also knew right away, very early on, actually, that he would reveal his identity.
What was so interesting, I mean, obviously the key to this was getting the cooperation of the other journalists, right? But it was very touch and go throughout. I mean, there were times when they kind of ignored him, they didn't know whether to take him seriously, and suddenly they did get on board, and it made all the difference.
I'm going to toot the horn here for somebody who hasn't had her horn tooted enough. I don't know if we would have heard of Edward Snowden if it hadn't been for Laura Poitras. Glenn Greenwald was the first to be contacted by Ed Snowden.
But he
ignored him for months.
Which is
Barton
really
Gellman, Laura called Barton Gellman in, but he wavered and wanted to know, and then he had the offer to
come. The Washington Post.
Yes, right. Snowden wanted him to come to Hong Kong, and he wouldn't. But Laura stuck with him from the moment she first heard from him with this mysterious email that, I'll make this worth your while in February.
And so now these journalists have been awarded the Pulitzer Prizes. What do you make of that? Does that sort of confer on Snowden a sense of legitimacy? Is he no longer a traitor because the journalists who reported on his story received the ultimate prize in journalism?
That's such a good question, Bill. I think, first of all, absolutely they should have gotten the Pulitzer Prize on the grounds simply that this was the biggest journalistic story of the year. Can we say maybe even the decade?
Yeah, sure. Or the early millennium.
Was it the most difficult story for the journalists to get? I mean, there are deals that make the rankings, but they're not the most sophisticated deals. It's Edward Snowden who took all the risks and really, was the one who was very courageous. Does it reflect on him? I don't think. Again, this is like Rashomon. It's going to be viewed differently by different people. I personally don't think that he was a traitor, and it's never really entered well, it did. Of course, we have to look at every angle. But for some people, I don't think it will change anybody's mind. In fact, it could inflame them. Didn't Representative King say that the Pulitzer Committee should, kind of drop dead? And
there's a lot of
I think
interesting
he was a ruder.
Your piece is really interesting in a lot of ways, not least of which because it suggests that he had a nuanced view on it as well. But let me ask you really quickly about how you guys broke down the work. Sarah Ellison, who worked with you, and Brian Burrows, and how did you guys break down the different pieces of the reporting in this, or was it kind of just all hands on deck?
It started out, Sarah, of course, her expertise is in the press, the media. She's written a book on Rupert Murdoch, WikiLeaks. She's written about WikiLeaks. I tend to come at things with the idea that above all and under all and around all, the individual is the most important. So I did his whole life, and I did the NSA, and I did the CIA. And Brian did everything else.